Welcome to Buckets. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I'm joined by Captain Clutch Jim Turvey. You can find him on Twitter at TurveyBets and in the Action Network app. This is your How to Bet Clutch Player of the Year. We'll break it down, give you Jim's analysis, and I will try and learn about how to bet what is, to me, I got some thoughts on this award. We'll get into it. I want to let you know that everything we talk about, including Jim's picks, can be found in the award-winning Action Network app. You can track all of our futures plays here on Buckets. You can catch Brandon Anderson's red-hot NFL picks. You can track all of the great fight bets from Brian Fonseca. You can track all sorts of awesome stuff in the Action Network app. Also, make sure to go to youtube.com/The Action Network. Hit the like and subscribe button for me. If you're a Buckets listener and you support the show and you're like, I love those guys, let us know. Go hit the like button on our videos. It really helps. You have no idea how much a single like helps us. Like, it helps get these videos so other people can find it. It helps us with, hey, the show is doing really well. You gotta let us know how much you like the show. So go ahead and go to youtube.com/The Action Network, catch the video version of this podcast, and give us a like. All right. So Jim's gonna give us clutch player of the year, and he's gonna give us best bets. I'm not gonna have any because I don't. So here's a big thing. I talk about this with Brandon a lot about how if you're negative about something, like, people don't want to listen to it. Like, you can be negative about a player, and that engages debate, but you're still excited to talk about, like, whatever it is. If you're like, Dak Prescott sucks, you're still excited to talk about the NFL. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm not excited to talk about clutch player, because I think most everything about NBA, and especially NBA awards betting, is really interesting. I will just say, I don't understand. I just don't really get that. Like, I don't know how voters are supposed to do this. There's no discretion if you think about it logically at all. You're either just gonna go like, well, I saw like Steph Curry make like a bunch of shots at the buzzer, so like he's the clutch player of the year, which is a terrible way to do any sort of analysis on anything. Or you're just gonna go look at the literal clutch numbers and be able to determine who hit the most of them. Like, this would be like, it is analogous to me of points per game player of the year. Like, guess what? We have a number that tells us who scored the most points per game. So I'm confused by it, but I will say this. Jim has zeroed in on this award and found how much value there is in betting this award, because we know that MVP is sharp, and we know that a lot of these markets are really sharp. We know the futures are sharp. This one is new, and Jim's gotten he has found a lot of insight in how to bet this, and his handicap is very sharp. So Jim, help me out here. Explain to me how we should bet NBA clutch player of the year.
Yeah, well, to a degree, you were very correct. This is an award that came about 2 years ago. We only have two winners so far, De'Aaron Fox and Steph Curry. And for both years that this award has existed, it has literally been, go to NBA.com. They have you can look by stats. You can look at clutch stats. You can look at clutch points. What they define as clutch is games within 5 points in the final 5 minutes. And you can control sort by total points for the season. And the number one player in 2022-23 was De'Aaron Fox, who won the award. The number one player in 2023-24 was Steph Curry, who won the award. So it is a ridiculous award, 100%. However, it has also made for a very easy to bet award so far. It's been for a very easy to project at the beginning of the season award as well. So I have had a lot of fun with it, poking around a little bit, because the markets, honestly, the numbers they're hanging before the season, but particularly in the season, just really aren't that good. So again, I was tempted to come on here and talk about MVP. Well, it's much buzzier. It's going to get, many more eyeballs. People care much more about it, deservedly, because outside of the betting world, you should care about, I would say, a million times X about MVP as to when you do about clutch play of the year. However, we are a betting podcast. We are a bank podcast that likes to win people money. And honestly, I find far more value in clutch player of the year betting than I do MVP betting, which I sit out almost every year because it's an annoyingly sharp market in which, realistically, there's 5 players that can win, and the market knows that. So I have a couple of names here that interest me for sure. And I have my approach before the season and during the season we can talk through as well. But I do think, to a degree, this will be a shorter podcast because it has, at least so far, been a relatively easy to solve puzzle.
Okay, so like total points, by the way, that's even dumber than like points per game or per 100 possessions. Like it's even dumber than the other one. I agree. MVP is sharp. You have to be able to kind of navigate those waters. It's a lot more fun, but I do think that there's a lot of opportunity here. So to give viewers and our audience listening on podcast 5-star reviews, please, a sense of what it was last year. Steph won with 189. He had the most clutch points last 5 minutes inside 5 points. DeMar DeRozan was second at 182. Damian Lillard was third at 139. Nikola Jokić was fourth with 129. That one's really interesting to talk about. De'Aaron Fox, the 2023 winner, was fifth with 122. Then you had Mikal Bridges, who I put an early bet in, and then the next season imploded. Shea was at 112. Trey was at 107. DeJounte 106. That's interesting. And Jalen Brunson at 106 as well for 9th. And then 10th was Giannis Antetokounmpo at 104. You have a lot of these where it's like multiple guys on the same good team, which I don't suppose is that surprising. If you're a good team and you have really good players and they're in clutch games, you're going to win a lot of them because your guys score a lot of points. I do think... So it's funny to me that like this is like the baseline, the last 5 minutes inside 5 points. Because if you ask me, like, what's clutch, I would be like, oh, it needs to be, because I've done this. I've looked at like who has the most buckets inside the final 2 minutes to tie or take the lead. That to me is like, that's clutch. I don't give a shit if you're up 4 and Steph makes a 3
with 5 minutes on the clock still.
Yeah, to make it 7 with 3:30 to go when I know the other team's not coming back. That's not clutch. But this is again the inherent problem is if you're a voter and you're like, well, I need some evidence, I need some number. Like I can't just look over every clutch game and see who had like the best clutch play. It's too much work and time. So I guess I'll just shorthand this and I'll go look at it. So I think that that's really interesting that it just really kind of does come down to that. I want to single out here a question for you. One, do you think this is an award there would be any resistance to a multiple time or repeat winner?
I do think that I do very much think, and that was actually one of the points I was going to bring up, because if you look at this year's odds, the current favorite in the market is Steph Curry to repeat. This screams an award that does not repeat to me. It screams an award that's kind of like, we like this person, and they were kind of a story of the year. Like those De'Aaron Fox Kings were kind of this fun, they kind of took the league a little bit by storm, and they had all these close games. Like it very much was kind of a thing where it was like, oh, I saw De'Aaron Fox, on SportsCenter several times making big buckets down the stretch. That kind of made sense. Last year with Curry, I actually was a little bit surprised. I thought last year that DeMar DeRozan, who was, as you said, like basically neck and neck with Curry in terms of total clutch points, to me, this made sense as a DeMar DeRozan is the guy who's never going to win an MVP. He's never going to honestly win a title as a key player. He has long been a player who actually legitimately does have better crunch time numbers. I thought he made perfect sense to give it to. They didn't end up giving it to him. They gave it to Curry. But I do think that I would be very surprised if Curry got 2 straight seasons. I'd be pretty surprised if De'Aaron Fox got it 2 out of 3. This seems to me like an award that's kind of a fill in the gap type of award. For Curry, maybe it's that he is a very popular player, legacy, and he was at the top of the control sort leaderboard points. However, I think that there is room for nuance here, and I think maybe you and I can start a little mini revolution here. I think that there can be more to this award, and if it doesn't even take all that much. So if you go to that same leaderboard, the control sort points in the clutch, and you go look all the way to the right, there's that plus minus there. And now plus minus is a flawed stat. You don't want it to be the only thing you're looking at. However, it would at least create a little bit more nuance to this than just sorting by points. And I'll kind of soft launch my first best bet here, who is Nikola Jokić, who is a player who does not often find himself getting high usage in these types of situations. However, he consistently has some of the best on-off metrics. He consistently is actually one of the best clutch players and creates very strong. So if you look at the best plus minus last year, there's 3 Chicago Bulls in front of them. That was Coby White, who's actually a very interesting name in this award, who led the league last year. Then DeMar DeRozan, another Bull as well. And then you have Michael Porter Jr., who is there because of Nikola Jokić. So if we create a little bit of nuance on this, I actually think that Jokić, he was 4th in points last season while being far fewer field goal attempts. And one thing I look at, especially during the season, is I want to look at who's getting the field goal attempts, because that usually is going to drive, everyone's going to kind of end up, relatively close to each other in terms of, points per field goal attempt. However, that's not really true with Jokić. Jokić is always going to be more efficient. He's always going to have less attempts, but, almost as many points as the others. So I think that if we create any sort of nuance to this, right now, Nikola Jokić is out there at 35-1 plus 3,500 behind many, 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 many names. He legitimately might be the best clutch player in the NBA right now. I think that there is a movement to be had out there, a movement to be made to create some nuance to this in what's a very new award. And maybe people don't care enough about the award, just to be perfectly honest. However, if people do care and people want to kind of look at this even one layer beyond just sorting by the points leaderboard, I think looking at the plus minus stat is one that, like you said, it's very hard to go back and watch every single close game. You and I talked last season. We went on StatHead and we looked at, buckets that either tied or gave the lead in the last minute. And that actually was that matched these clutch rankings where Curry and DeRozan were both near the top of that. Paolo Banchero was another name to keep an eye on. He was near the top of those rankings. But I think if we look at the actual impact on these close late games, a player like Nikola Jokić is actually going to have a chance in this award. And I think it would be a very fitting award for him to win this year, because I if you watch those close games, which I think Denver might have a few more of this year, I think both of us are looking potentially at them taking a small step back in the regular season and potentially not being a 55 win team, but maybe more like a 48 to 50 win team. I think there's a lot of boxes that Jokić checks off to be a very interesting candidate, especially at a number as long as plus 3,500.
I hate you for making this so interesting. Okay, so here's what's interesting about this. Centers are not thought of as clutch players because no other center really gets the ball in clutch time. It does not happen consistently. We're in a different era, but there's still kind of this idea of like, you don't give the ball, like what does a clutch shot look like? Like a clutch shot looks like the shot from Jordan. That's what it looks like, right? Pull up jumper, crossover, pull up jumper. I once asked George Karl, I was like, why, like your entire system is based off of moving the ball, high motion offense. Why don't you in clutch time, you just give it to Gallo? Why do you do this? And he was like, I don't honestly know. He's like, it's just something we do in the NBA is one guy gets the ball and one guy shoots. We don't really run sets, which it's what's really funny because everybody's like, oh, who's really good at out of timeout play call. Like very few teams actually run good plays to set up good, because you want to get the ball in the hands of your best player. But guess what? Every set that you can run, the other team knows and can diagram how to defend. So you can only really do it to generate shots for other guys, which means that you're already opting into a less optimum result. So with the center thing, I want to have resistance and pushback here. But I was like, they're going to be in more clutch games because they got worse because they lost KCP and they're starting Christian Brown. And so I think they're going to be worse, but they'll still win a lot because their clutch rating has always been insane. Now, part of that's because their clutch rating is insane because their defense in the clutch the last two seasons, the Nuggets basically fuck around on defense for 3 quarters and then clamp. Like that is definitely their model, to the point where Michael Malone, I once asked him, I was like, don't you wish that they would do it the rest of the game? He's like, at some point you just have to accept who your team is. And this is who we are. Is like, those guys will do it when it needs to. And that's got to be good enough for me. Yoke's going to have the ball. So usage is not a problem. Nobody else is going to have the ball more. Jamal obviously makes a bunch of tough shots in the playoffs, but Jokić will have opportunities. Like it's all reads. If they don't defend, if they focus on Jamal Murray taking those shots, Jokić will absolutely shoot. And then I was like, well, wait, okay. Jokić had all these really good clutch numbers last season. What does the voting look like? And by the way, you mentioned no one really cares about this award. So Basketball Reference has like a official table built for voting for all of the awards except for clutch player.
Sports Odds History has all the odds except for clutch player of the year.
Poor Jerry West is who this is named after. Poor Jerry West, rest in peace.
Honestly, fitting. It's fitting.
It's just tough, man. However, in the voting, not only did Jokić finish 4th with a very respectable 85 points out of in the ballot, he got 4 first place votes. 4 first place and 14 second place votes.
I think we can.
Damn it, Jim! I'm in 35-1. Let's go.
Start the revolution here, Matt. If people genuinely look at this and they actually think about like a little bit harder than this control sort points, I think we can get to a Jokić at 35-1 is kind of a crazy number. Now, I'll say, looking through the market here, it's one of these markets kind of like Coach of the Year, ironically, where there is not a single player outside of 4 digits. You're getting 4 digits on everyone because it's a little bit of a dartboard. However, I don't think it's as much of a dartboard as it looks. Like there's, for instance, Luka is tied for the shortest odds. He's a co-favorite here with Steph and Shea. I think Shea is an interesting name, but honestly, both of those guys have less usage in the clutch than you would imagine. I think for Dallas, it's in part because Kyrie is there, and for Shea, it's kind of, again, it's like a team atmosphere on OKC, and I honestly think they might not be playing that many close games this year. So those are 2 names. When you have the 3 favorites again, Steph, Shea, and Luka, and I don't really like any of them, I'm always going to be intrigued by a market. The next couple names, Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards, Dame Lillard, I think all 3 of those guys are pretty interesting. But I don't want to lay a favorite right now. I do think this is one of the easiest awards to bet during the regular season. I was able to get Curry at 10-1, and by the time posting, it was 8-1 on January 30th of last year. Wow. It was a preseason bet of DeMar DeRozan at 30-1. So it was one of these where it's like, it's going to be one of these 2 players, pretty obviously. Let's get in with one of the 2. I think this is if you get a couple of nice mid-range folks before the season, and then during the regular season, you're just kind of looking at who is getting field goal attempts. I think there's a couple interesting names here in terms of if they have openings because of teammates leaving. And I'm going to give 2 names off the board. We talked about some of the favorites. These are players who literally you can't even find the odds to bet them right now, but I'm very intrigued by these 2 guys. Coby White. I mentioned Coby White last season, in part because the Chicago Bulls team was really quite clutch. I think a lot of it was DeMar DeRozan, but Coby White actually had some really good crunch time numbers. Now, again, how much of that was DeRozan, who genuinely has shown an ability to do really well down the stretch? But he was 12th in field goal attempts. Coby White was in clutch field goal attempts, despite being DeMar's teammate. If DeMar's gone, all of the looks are now going to be going to Coby White. And that was kind of happening last season. If you look at from February 1st on, he was 6th in terms of clutch field goal attempts. So they started to kind of give him the ball late. He's one who I'd keep an eye on. The Bulls might be too bad to make this actually really matter. They might not even really be in games. I think the floor for their team is quite low. But if they end up playing at the kind of high side of their potential, and they're like a 35-win team, they will definitely be in enough games that I would keep an eye on Coby White and see if he can float that late-term offense and actually do a decent job with that. The other is Alperen Şengün. He was 19th by clutch field goal attempts, but during the part of the season he was actually healthy, he was in the top 10. This could be, we talked a little bit about like how there is some narrative to this award as well. The Rockets this season strike me as a very similar story potentially to the Kings of 2 years ago, where it's a team that kind of arrives on the scene, a bunch of fun young players that like people are going to, at least I'm going to be watching a lot of Rockets games. I know I've heard a lot of kind of NBA hipster types really all over this Rockets team that goes like 12 deep with fun young talent. If they're in a bunch of fun games that people are watching and Şengün is getting some big buckets late in the game, it goes against the center rule. You'll notice that is going to be a theme for me this episode. I do not mind going with some of the centers here. But if that's a way to give the Rockets, who are kind of like this breakout story of the year, give them an award. Şengün's a guy who, at a number that doesn't even exist right now, so he'll probably come on the market, if at all, at a nice long number, I think is kind of an interesting name as well.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. But I do have best bet for this episode. And mine's gonna be I am not afraid to take a 15-1. I'm gonna take Dame Lillard.
Yeah.
I just think that, look, Dame had a miserable season last year for a number of reasons. I think the Bucks are likely to be a little bit better, even if I like their win total under. I think qualitatively they're gonna be better, even if I don't think they're gonna be quantitatively all that much better. And Dame, just like look at all the numbers, like look at all the numbers indicates that he should be in serious contention for this award. There will not be any problem with voting for him. He's considered to be, Dame time.
Yeah.
Like Dame time's not going to win a clutch player of the year award. So I will go ahead and say that I like Damian Lillard at 15-1 based off of the numbers and the situation that they're going to be in. DeRozan to me is really interesting, Jim, that He is finished second, had a real chance of winning this award last year. He's at 20-1, I think largely built off of he's splitting time now with the 2023 winner. I'll just say this. DeMar's going to have the ball because that's how this goes. Like, I don't necessarily think that that's the best option, but also DeMar is like literally one of the best mid-range shooters of all time at this point. Like, if you look at by the numbers, his numbers are preposterous from mid-range, which that's a lot of the clutch shots. And so I genuinely like, how can I put this? I don't have a lot of confidence that in clutch moments, De'Aaron's going to be like, I got this. Even though De'Aaron should be like, I got this. I feel like DeMar is going to be like, I got a young fella. Don't worry. And like, it's not a bad idea. It's not the best idea. It's just not a bad idea. And so I do kind of feel like DeMar, given how good he's been in the clutch and his reputation and how much people love him, and he said he's never going to win this like various awards, at 20-1 for a Kings team that I'm kind of starting to get a good vibe about. I'm a little interested in that.
Yeah, DeMar was a name that popped. There's actually a lot of names in this second tier that I kind of like in the like 20 to 40 range. DeMar is absolutely one of those. Donovan Mitchell is another one. He, for some reason, did not get many clutch attempts last season, but the season before, 22-23, he was like kind of in this conversation. He's another one who has that reputation to a degree. I think maybe a little bit of the hesitancy there is that you're always saying that people do not give Mitchell the credit he deserves. I think that is the case, especially in Cleveland, but he's at 25-1. It's an interesting number. Durant and Paolo were the two highest rated by field goal attempts in the clutch last season, or they were two of the top 8, and they have longer odds than the rest of the people who were in that top 8. So those are some names as well, especially Paolo as a young player. I think maybe you got to establish yourself a little bit more as a, clutch type player, but we saw De'Aaron Fox win at a pretty young age as well. So Paolo could follow that path. But the one other name that I want to make sure to shout as a best bet. So Jokić was my first best bet. We're going back to the center well. We're going back to a unique, obscure name that people might not have heard of. Victor Wembanyama at 75-1, plus 7,500. So he was 17th in clutch points last season, despite being a center, despite being a rookie, despite his team not even being close in games for the first chunk of the season. And the proof is in the pudding there. If we go to January 1st on, he was 9th in clutch points. If we go to February 1st on, he was 7th in clutch points. If we go to March 1st on, just the very end when the Spurs were really playing their best basketball, he was 4th in clutch points. Now he is listed out there at 75-1 in a year where the Spurs potentially are going to be a much better team and in that kind of like high 30s to 40 win total range. The Warriors last year only won, mid 40s. You don't have to get to a crazy win total to have all this clutch success. I think that, at that number, 75-1, I don't think he should be the favorite. But again, if we're talking narratively, Wemby, if we're making him wait on MVP, maybe we're making him wait on Defensive Player of the Year, even though he currently is the favorite. That seems to break all the previous rules. This could be a really nice award if the Spurs become kind of this buzzy team this year. Maybe there's a lot of other ways to award them. But at 75-1, I couldn't turn down the person who throughout the season just got higher and higher in the clutch points ranks. And as we know, that is still the way that we are approaching this award, at least to cap to start the season.
Jim, be honest with me. Do you have a bet going with Brandon over who can have the more outrageous Victor Wembanyama bet? Like, am I getting pranked here by an effort? Like,
yeah, I was plus 150 before this episode. I think I'm minus 150 now.
Is Joe Delara going to come on and give me like Keldon Johnson to lead the league in points? Like, what's going to happen next with this? Okay. Victor, 75-1 is a ticket. That's a ticket you can have in your back pocket. Okay. Is there anybody else you kind of want to get to?
Honestly, those are the biggest names. You highlighted Dame. I do think that the top 3, if you're looking to literally set it and forget it, I think that Dame, Brunson, or Ant are the 3 best. And I think Dame and Brunson in particular are the 2 best. Lillard was the leader for this award to start last season. He got off to a crazy good start at the beginning of the season. Then they kind of, as the team kind of stumbled during the middle of the season, he stumbled a little bit as well. He's always going to have the narrative to this award that we talked about with DeRozan as well. I think you made that point. I think it is very true. But Brunson also has that. Brunson is a player who gets leaned on a lot. I don't think the Knicks are going to run their way to mid-50s win totals. I'm a little bit lower on the Knicks. I think that kind of helps. I think you want to have a lot of clutch, close games. The Knicks are obviously going to be under the spotlight a lot. They are New York. If there's an award that can go to a Knick, it will go to a Knick. So I think those are the two. If you truly want like one ticket and you don't want to follow it all year and you want kind of a favorite that you're going to, no matter what, it's got a really high floor. Those are two guys who are going to be taking lots and lots of clutch field goal attempts throughout the season. My biggest worry with both guys, to be honest, is they don't have the greatest health. Brunson, I shouldn't even say that. I have worries about Brunson's health because he's on a Tibbs team and built like he is. He has not shown that yet, but I have worries about the health for both players. So I'd want to bet those guys in the regular season at plus 500 if I'm confident that they're staying healthy, rather than bet them now at a little bit longer number, but with the potential for another name coming out of nowhere or injury risk for those two guys. But I really like all three of those names.
Okay, I have two follow-up questions for you.
Yep.
On kind of the top end stuff that we got, just like thinking about it. Brunson, by the way, with 2 first place votes last year, 4 second place. I want to go back to what you said about the repeat winner. If we know that this award is largely driven by one stat, who has the most points in clutch time? I should mention this, that Steph Curry, freak of nature, shot 45.7% from 3-point range in clutch time. He hit 32 threes in clutch time, Jim. The next closest player was Buddy Hield, who also plays for his team now, with 13.
That is insane.
So if it's just that, what is your feeling for why they wouldn't just give it to Steph again?
Yeah, it's a really fair question. And with this type of an award that we only have 2 years of, there is going to be a little bit of projecting your own feelings onto an award. And, that has burned me in the past. I said that there was no way on God's green earth that Embiid would go back-to-back for last year's MVP. And then it looked like he was the favorite for a while. Now, of course, things happened and it didn't turn out. But that was a corner I was on that looked like a really bad corner to be on. This is kind of a corner I'm on, and feeling that this is an award that, because it's kind of the participation trophy of awards right now, I don't think it makes sense to go back-to-back in an award that is so much kind of like an afterthought. It would seem weird to me. But again, that's a little bit of my projecting, and the voters don't always go along with what you as an individual project, especially when we have so little history to go off of.
Okay, Steph 11-1 currently, tied with Shea, who finished on the ballot as well. My other follow-up question for you is the MVP drag here. So we talked about Jokić, right? On the ballot, we see that Shea was 3rd and Jokić was 4th. And I kind of wonder if clutch player is baked into MVP. So to kind of think of it from an NFL perspective, if you're the offensive player of the year at quarterback, you are likely to just win MVP. And I'm not saying that it's 1-to-1 with clutch time, because you got to be good the rest of the game and put up the numbers and the wins. We've talked about that. But do you think it's possible that for some of these players, and I think Brunson finished 5th on MVP, right? So we have in the top 5 on the ballot, we have 3 of the top 5 finishers for MVP last season.
Yeah, you definitely.
Which to me,
it's definitely a market where, because, like you said, how coaches will just kind of roll the ball out to their best player. It's going to overlap with some of the best players. It was funny looking through some of the past years and trying to find random names. You know me, I naturally was going to the long shots. I gave out a couple long shots here. I was looking for the Coby Whites of the world. It's actually pretty rare. It really is just often the best players. But I don't think that there's necessarily a we're giving you X, so we're not going to give you Y. Although I will, to your point, Shea actually had fewer clutch points than Jokić, and he finished ahead of him in the clutch player of the year. So maybe there were. Now, maybe this is where you can enlighten me. They don't share, the voters who are voting for MVP won't vote for this award, correct? You get a specific award you vote for, and you don't have overlap.
Nope, you vote for all of them.
You do. You vote down the ballot. So then maybe there is the to some degree, if you are writing a name in MVP, then you would not write it in clutch. I could see a little bit of that, which if you are on Jokić for MVP this season, maybe that does ding a little bit the clutch player of the year award. I think that's a really sharp take.
Okay. All right. That's going to do it for best bets for clutch player of the year. Jim, run us down your best bets one more time for us.
Yeah, I'm going to do my 2 favorites are Nikola Jokić, 35-1, and Victor Wembanyama 75-1.
Okay, I'm gonna go with a very reasonable Damian Lillard at 15-1. He shot 20. By the way, Dame shot 29.5% from three in clutch time last year. That feels like a number that could definitely regress back to the mean, even as Dame gets a little bit older. Make sure to check out all of Jim's futures bets. You can follow him in the Action Network app at Turvy Bets. He's also on Twitter there. We'll be back tomorrow as we talk about Most Improved Player, another award that's driven me absolutely insane. Be on the lookout for that. Tito Bonach is our producer on video. David Payne's our producer on audio. My thanks to them for their help getting this episode up. Make sure to leave us 5-star reviews. Hit the like and subscribe at youtube.com/The Action Network. And we'll see you guys again next time. Till then, let's get buckets.